Welcome to the Cohn Zone. That's my dad, Lowell Cohn. I'm Grant Cohn. Niners just wrapped up day 11 of training camp. We'll talk about the ins and outs of practice. But today we want to look forward to the first preseason game, which starts on Friday, which is Friday, at home against the Green Bay Packers. Dad, good to see you. How are you?
I'm fine, and I'm going to see you later because we're having dinner together with the whole mishbucha, the whole
We got
family.
the whole mishbucha coming together for family in a few. I'm looking forward to it.
It'd be nice at my house.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so what's on your mind? What are you most looking forward to in this game, this preseason game?
I have a very clear agenda, and I know it's debatable. It's about how long Kyle Shanahan is going to play Trey Lance. And I understand the downside of playing him too long. He could get hurt because the offensive line is questionable, and McGlinchey and Trent Williams won't start. I'm not so sure that McGlinchey not starting is a big deal anyway. I don't know where he's at, is what I'm saying. But Trent Williams, of course. Here's what if I were Kyle Shanahan, and I'm not Kyle Shanahan, I would play him for a quarter because I think this kid has to play. And when does he play in games? He plays in practice. You know what I mean? He in the offseason, he has catches with people. I think he needs to see another defense, and he needs to play against it for 15 minutes or however many minutes he gets. And again, it's because he needs to play in a game. What do you think?
Well, I totally agree that he needs to play in a game, and the more reps, the better. There's some concerns that I'd like you just to address. Let's say, so you want him to play the entire first quarter. You're the coach. Would you also have the first string offensive line play with him the entire first quarter?
I would have my best offensive linemen that are available. McGlinchey wouldn't mean. I understand why you're not playing McGlinchey and Trent Williams. You don't want to get him hurt. Yeah. I understand he's an older guy. You don't want to get him hurt. But I would hope that Kyle has 5 reasonable offensive linemen that this kid won't get killed. And if he doesn't, if he's not playing the kid for the first quarter because his offensive line sucks, then shame on Kyle.
Yeah, shame on Kyle. Shame on the people who got these offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Now, the only reason I bring up like the concern is because he did break his finger in preseason last year playing behind the second string offensive line, like late in the second quarter of a preseason game. But you're not saying playing in the second quarter.
Oh no, just the
first quarter.
Yep. Against
I don't have a problem with that.
With your best available offensive linemen. And if there aren't guys who are up to snuff at this point, it's a shame. It's a shanda. It's very bad.
Absolutely. And if you see that the offensive line is that bad, but you still need to get Trey Lance reps, there's things you can call. You can run the ball. You can throw screens. There are things you can do to protect Trey Lance yourself as a play caller and still get him the reps, which I agree he desperately needs. Kyle was asked today about how much he's going to play the starters, and he didn't have to tell the truth. He may not have told the truth, but he said, maybe the first series. We'll see. He said he could change his mind based on practice this week. So it sounds like last year, he didn't play the starters for an entire quarter. It would be like the first series, and then Lance would come in for a long time. But maybe that's because Lance needed reps. Maybe now that Lance still needs reps, he'll change his schedule. He probably should.
The idea of playing them just for the first series, for me, is ludicrous. What are these games for? Yeah. It's like spring training. What are these games for if not to get your game ready? So I'll play him for one quarter seems for Lowell, foolhardy and almost a little arrogant. Like we got it knocked. No, you don't, Buster. You need to play this kid.
Yeah. You don't have Matthew Stafford. You don't have a veteran quarterback. You need a guy who didn't play last year because you didn't let him. And so now he needs to play as much as possible. And he can't get hurt because then if he does your seasons, then you got to make amends with Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah, I'm with you on that. How much he played against the Packers the first quarter would sound good to me. But here's how it used to be, right? Four preseason games, it would be like the first series, then an entire quarter, and then the first half. And then maybe you wouldn't play the fourth game. Now it's 3 games in 12 days. So what Kyle's thinking is a series and then not at all next week against the Vikings, just the joint practices. And then again, in the final game, a series. I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if that's
so in 3 games, Trey Lance would play 2 series.
Who knows how many he might not throw a pass. I have no idea, but it seems
I don't like it. Yeah, I don't like it. And here's the thing. Football's a tough game.
Yep.
People get knocked down. People get hurt. It's not the ballet.
Yeah.
And You need to be ready for that. You need to
Yeah.
feel it. You need to face it. You need to be an NFL player. You can't coddle this kid,
Right.
because if you do, he could really not be ready when the season starts.
Right. If you don't give him a preseason now, his preseason will be the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
And that's your fault for not letting him do this earlier. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, I acknowledge that football is a tough game. I acknowledge it, and I kind of like it.
Yeah.
You got to face up to it.
Yeah. And it's not like it's what it was in the 80s. Like there's been 100 new rules that protect the quarterback. If Kyle Shanahan does his part and the offensive line does their part, they should be able to get Trey Lance a little extra work in these preseason games, because there's a lot of pressure on him and he doesn't have that much more time to get prepared.
One other thing, Iggy.
Yeah.
Sometimes in these preseason games, the two coaches make a handshake agreement, no blitzing.
Yes. Yes.
It happens.
Yes.
Now, I don't know. I don't know what Kyle's relationship is with LaFleur at this point. I don't even know if they're talking to each other, right?
Good point.
But I know that in games there have been a handshake agreement. Look, no blitzing.
It's preseason.
Yeah. So that can be worked out.
I remember in 2011, Jim Harbaugh was really in his most arrogant phase. He had just become the Niners offensive coordinator, and he was talking about how good the Niners were going to be before the season started. And I think really pissed off Sean Payton. So I think it might have been the first preseason game, Sean Payton blitzed Alex Smith relentlessly in that game. And I think the Niners were offended. And Sean Payton was like, well, I'm offended at how your head coach talks about our league, which he just entered as a head coach. So I remember that happening. I don't know if Kyle has antagonized Matt LaFleur to that extent.
Okay. Anyway, it's an interesting concept. There are so many ways to avoid getting this kid hurt. Handoff, screen passes, passes to the flat, all that kind of stuff. He needs to be in there. He needs to hear the count. I mean, to give the count. He needs to feel the ball coming into his hands. And I know Green Bay isn't going to actually game plan, and the Niners aren't going to actually game plan, but it's still football.
Yeah, and he needs to face another defense, because the one he's facing daily, he's not kicking his ass every day, but it's a really good defense, and it's creating. It's like the question is he just overmatched or is he inconsistent? Well, now we can go find out.
And it might even improve his confidence.
Yes, it was interesting today. Some days they have some offensive starters sitting and all the entire defense out there, and he really gets his ass kicked. Today, all the offensive starters out there, and they sat the two corners. It was like, hey, Trey Lance, why don't you build some confidence today? I think it's important to do that, though. You can't just beat the guy's confidence down in 3 weeks and be like, hey, go get him, buddy.
Everything I know about coaching is you're supposed to build the guy's confidence up.
Yeah. And I don't see that the Niners broke it down for two weeks. Today, they built it up a little bit by design. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Rafa, thank you for becoming a member. The Mech says, hey, I laughed at the Ayuk Shanahan office door. He clearly is shy or introverted, trying to become a leader. Really like him. Deep ball me, please. Did you hear this story?
No.
I asked Kyle Shanahan about Ayuk coming into his own as a guy, maturing and growing up. And he said, he used to be, he didn't talk. Now he'll come into my office every day and say hello, and that's it. He won't say anything else, but he'll stand there. So someone must have told Ayuk, you got to go talk to the coach. Say hello, interact with him. So he took it literally. Hi. And he'll just stand there. And then Kyle will keep the conversation going because he's so, charmed that Ayuk is doing that. But he must be extremely introverted.
That's a lovely story. So he thinks all you do is say hi and stand there.
Yes.
He ought to have a topic the next time, right?
Talk about tennis.
Tennis. Yeah.
George says, I understand where you guys are coming from, but the reason why I agree with Kyle is he got hurt last year in a preseason game. Well, we don't know what Kyle's plan is yet. He hasn't told us. He might play him a lot.
I think this comment is on point. It's fair. And if they're afraid of him getting hurt, I appreciate it and I understand. I happen to feel different about it. I feel a football player needs to play, but I understand that point, and I'm not putting it down.
Also, Kyle played Lance a lot in preseason last year. What has changed since then? He still needs reps. I can see him doing it again.
I like Lance a lot.
Dave says, Grant, Mr. Lowell Cohn, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for doing this again. Glad you're doing well. You guys are like family to me without ever meeting. You're in my house for every video you make, Grant. Thank you, Dave.
Dave, thank you so much. That was a really kind comment.
Dave's a very sweet guy. Okay. So there's a training camp going on, but there's also a sideshow at the training camp, which the 49ers have created. It is no one's fault except for the 49ers. There's the training camp, which has the young quarterback having some good days and some bad days. And then you got Jimmy Garoppolo in the side field, throwing passes, smiling, waving to the fans. Still on the team. And he's on the depth chart. On the depth chart for it. It was amazing, Dad. What'd you think of that?
Tell us the depth chart at quarterback.
Okay, the depth chart today, unofficial. 1, Trey Lance. 2, Nate Sudfeld. 3, Brock Purdy. 4, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay. I could go out of my skull and I want to low key this. Talking a calm voice. Let's just talk about the facts.
Yeah.
On the face of it, to put Jimmy Garoppolo number 4 is ridiculous. We're just talking about ability. From my point of view, Jimmy Garoppolo on that group is either 2 or 1. He's not 3 and he's not 4. He's probably 2 because, he's getting over the shoulder surgery. But, up until this season, he was the number 1 quarterback.
Right. Well, it was like 6 months ago that he was number 1 on the
number 1 quarterback. He took him to the championship game. So he's either 1 or 2. So what they're doing is ludicrous, and we understand that.
Yes.
What's bad about it is it's a bad look. I'm gonna, we're old English majors, so we used to talk about symbolism. All right.
Yeah.
The symbolism of having him number 4 on the depth chart is sort of like, first of all, Jimmy, why don't you fuck off? Right? That's what number 4. Isn't that what it's symbolic of?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what you tell somebody when you do that.
Yeah.
And the other is, it's a visual reminder to everyone who follows the 49ers how they screwed this up. Yeah. That they actually have to put a depth chart and demote him to 4 because they didn't get rid of him earlier when they could have got rid of his salary and got additional players early on. So it's a visual symbol of really how they haven't handled his situation all that well.
And it's like a microcosm of their entire offseason.
Which
has been ridiculous. And it's been a series of ridiculous events after another. And each time the Niners talk about it with a straight face, like, what? It's totally normal. It's fine. Everything's going fine. And then another ridiculous thing. Oh, Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the team. That's the plan. Now he's throwing the side field. Oh, that's not a distraction at all. He's on the depth chart. It's ridiculous. And they can say, don't worry, he's not in the meetings. It's Trey's team. We're going to cut him. We're going to trade him. Who knows if they're telling? Who knows what'll happen, right? From Trey Lance's perspective, what if I hurt my finger? What if I have a really bad practice? Is he going to be in the huddle the next day? Is he going to be in the meeting the next day? Without saying it, aren't they putting more scrutiny on Trey Lance than's already there by keeping Jimmy Garoppolo in the building? Because the implication is we could go back.
Insurance.
We could go back and so everything you do is under the microscope. Impress us.
Iggy, I have a question.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought of this before. Is Jimmy not in the meetings?
Not in the meetings. And I think it's because he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to go. I think they could have him there, and he's like, nope, I just want to throw in front of the media so they talk about me, which is fair.
I understand. So they said, if you want to come, you can come. And essentially he's saying, screw you. You don't want me. Why should I be in the meetings?
I don't want to be in this team.
So essentially they've exiled him, but he's also exiled himself.
Yes.
What a situation. Iggy, I've never seen anything like this.
I know. And so the Niners, they're saying, we're going to talk about what the plan is for offboarding Jimmy Garoppolo next. But let's just linger one more time on the ridiculousness and the sheer ludicrousness of having him on the depth chart. And I think it's always talked about how it's bad for a backup to be a distraction. And that's why Kaepernick's not in the league. He made himself so big. Well, the Niners are making Jimmy Garoppolo a distraction. Jimmy's not a distraction, but the Niners are making him that by keeping him. And when they eventually cut him, which they will, aren't we both going to say, why didn't you do this 4 months ago?
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
They're going to end up cutting him. I'm going to win that bet with you.
Yes.
And I got you a nice bottle. I want a nice bottle.
Oh, and I'm going to get you a really nice Barolo.
Okay. And we're going to say that. Yeah. Why? Why not before? I have another question, Iggy.
Sure.
This is going to be a silly question, but Does Jimmy have a locker?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I would think
I
he does.
mean,
I would
is
think
he
he
in the
does.
locker room? I've never asked questions like this in 40 years.
Yeah.
But if he's not in the meetings, is he in the locker room, or does he sort of dress in his car? Do you know what I
I
mean?
would think he has a locker. If he's on the field, he must have a locker. No?
Well, the point is, you're not in the locker
I
room
don't
yet,
know.
right?
I don't
But
know.
I would really like to know: does he have a locker, and is it over by Trey Lance? Of
I
all
would
the
think
quarterbacks,
not.
wouldn't
Hey,
you like
bud, how
to
you doing?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Hey, Jimmy, would you just fuck off already, please? In the most
I'm
respectful way
trying.
possible.
I'm trying.
I don't want to be here.
I'm trying.
That's funny. We'll take a couple of questions and then we'll get to the next Jimmy G thing. Trey Lance says, I just put in overtime. I'm doing numbers like it's two of me. Good work, Trey. You keep working. Ricky Miranda says, update, it's August 9th, and Jimmy is still on the team. Side note, my girlfriend works at Fogo de Chao and saw him dining there yesterday. Nice. Jimmy must be living a stress-free life right now. Did he say hello to anyone? Did people recognize him? Mason, thank you for becoming a member. Dave, get rid of Jimmy once and for all. Play the kid, Trey area.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the offboarding process for Jimmy Garoppolo. According to the NFL Network, who they come to practice every once in a while and talk to people off the record, Niners reportedly plan to release Jimmy Garoppolo during the final cuts if a trade doesn't materialize. And a trade's not going to materialize. So they're saying they're going to hold on to him through training camp, through the preseason, and then like September 10th or something, they'll cut him. What do you think of that plan?
Well, that's what I expected all along. Remember, that's what I bet. So,
right. We have a bet going. You're going to win the bet.
Yeah, and I said that they'll either trade him or cut him right before the first regular season game. And I'm going to win that bet. What I think is, in a way, it's kind of crummy toward Jimmy. You know, had they cut him earlier, maybe he could have latched on as a backup somewhere. I don't think he'd be a starter right now, but in a position to be a starter if someone gets hurt. So I think Jimmy has been a good soldier on the 49ers. I'm sorry that he's in limbo like that.
I agree. I agree. It's like I think what they're saying is, well, look, dude, you didn't tell us about the surgery. You know, we were totally blindsided by this. They say they had a trade like agreed to in principle on the table and that Jimmy Garoppolo ruined it by having this surprise surgery. And so I think they're saying, well, we could do what's best for you, but you did what's best for you. So now we're going to do what's best for us. But I think it's funny that they think what's best for them is holding on to Jimmy Garoppolo like he's going to go somewhere and hurt him. You don't like Jimmy Garoppolo. You wanted to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. Now you're afraid of him? Well, you're afraid he's going to go to the Seahawks? It would be – they play the Seahawks in their home opener week 2. Imagine Jimmy Garoppolo coming and beating Trey Lance. I guess they're afraid of that. But that's not – if you're afraid of that, then keep him. Why? Yeah. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense.
One thing, Iggy, again, I've not dealt with Lynch and Shanahan. I don't think Garoppolo's shoulder surgery and bitterness toward it is dictating what they do.
Okay.
I think by this point, they probably don't have much emotion about it. And I believe there's some other agenda that we're not quite getting. I don't think they're trying to spite Jimmy. It's maybe Al Davis would have done a thing like that.
Fair. Well, then I think what it has to be is that they're aware that once they cut him, there will be a market for him on the free agent market. And he could become a starting quarterback. And he could make them look stupid by going somewhere and winning, especially if this team has a losing season. Maybe that's what they're afraid of. So you know what? Hold on to him. Don't let him prepare for another team. Put him behind the 8 ball. Hopefully he'll be a backup and no one will see him this year and we don't have to worry about that.
I see. So they save face.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, saving face. This is all about saving face.
Yeah, it's about saving face, not about getting even. I don't think it's about getting even. So,
but still, it seems hard to say they saved face when they're going to end up cutting him when they should have cut him 4 months ago.
Yeah, and we've been saying that for the last 4 months.
Yeah, 4 months. Make it 5 months. 5 months we've been saying this. Okay, but you're going to win that bet. I'm looking forward to paying up. Jody Moore says, Grant, my man, people are comparing Trey to Josh Allen and said it took 2 to 3 years for him. Question, did Buffalo have a Super Bowl ready team at the time? Patience was expected there. Will Niner fans have the same patience since we're a Super Bowl ready team? Dad, do you think if Trey Lance has a rough September, the Niner fans will be patient?
Not in the least.
Not in the least.
Not in the least.
Not in the least.
And if I were a fan, I wouldn't be patient.
No.
This isn't the rebuilding year. This
No.
is their window. Iggy,
Yeah.
this is their window. They have
Yeah.
a hell of a team.
Yeah.
Everywhere. They have
Yeah.
on defense especially. What a team. And they have Deebo Samuel and they have George Kittle. And, this is a hell. And they have running backs. No, this is their window. And I don't think people should think, oh, well, the kid needs to, he needs another season of seasoning. No.
He's had a season of seasoning. He's been on the team. He knows this. They said this was the best way to prepare a quarterback. Don't play him. That's the best way to do it. Don't play him. All right, well, then let's show us that that's the best way to do it, because I'm skeptical of that.
Yeah.
Playing usually helps.
I think so.
I don't know. Jody, that was extremely generous of you. $50. Thank you so much. I would have read it for $2. Josh says, what does Josh say? Let's get Brian Hoyer back. He was the franchise. He was very good in training camp, I got to say. He's going against a bad defense, though. Scribe, I don't know what that is. Scribe Mind says Jimmy being there doesn't matter. Trey will have to beat Brady Rodgers in January. He should be tough enough not to be bothered by Jimmy in July.
Well, I like that point.
I like that.
I like it. He should show the toughness not to be bothered. And frankly, I don't think he is bothered by the fact that Jimmy's there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he goes into the bathroom and cries, but I don't think so. My only issue is this kid has to play. If he's a football player, he needs to play in games.
That's a really funny visual. Sorry, I was just picturing him in a stool.
Crying.
Crying. Okay. So we talked about the quarterbacks every day for the last 8 months. Kyle Shanahan sitting in the back of the room with his hoodie over his head, like sort of escaping criticism. Let's bring Kyle to the front of the class real quick and talk about what's at stake for him, because all of a sudden he goes to the NFC Championship game. All scrutiny's gone. He still is 3 games under 500 entering year 6. What do you think is at stake for Kyle Shanahan this season?
Okay, let me just say something before we do it. We're not here to criticize him today.
No.
Right now, Shanahan. No. We're here to say what is at stake for him. And Iggy, this is his 6th season as head coach?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say, first of all, I think there's a lot at stake for him. I think this is a really important season. He has a 3-game under 500 in five seasons. He needs to make a statement that he's a winning coach, that he can get off fast. Last season, he couldn't. That he can get out of the blocks fast. He's a winning coach. And this we talked about before we got on air today. Iggy, he has his quarterback. This is his quarterback that he hand-selected and that he's brought along. Apparently, the way Bill Walsh brought along Joe Montana or Steve Young, he's brought him along. Kyle has brought Trey along according to his own plan. And apparently, or he says, this kid is ready. Well, he's got a great team and he has his quarterback. I'm telling you, Iggy, I feel he needs to get to the championship game and win it. He needs to get to the Super Bowl. If he loses the Super Bowl, okay, I think Sean McVay now has won a Super Bowl. But if Kyle loses the Super Bowl, he can't lose it again by blowing it.
Yeah.
He could get beat. You lose a football game.
Yeah.
But if you're ahead and you blow it, now that's a tragic flaw. It's a tragic flaw in his makeup. So what I'm saying, he needs to really, really kick ass this season. He has everything.
He does. There's more. I mean, he has to win, obviously. But I think he does have a 22-year-old starting quarterback. If he doesn't win the Super Bowl this year, I think people might understand. But if the quarterback plays well, it's all about Trey Lance. If Trey Lance looks like he is developing into a top-level quarterback, people will look at Kyle as the real deal. He's developing a quarterback. Because the narrative with him is that he's done so much without having his quarterback. You know, he's had Jimmy, who wasn't his choice, and he had RG3, who wasn't his choice, and he had that really good year with Matt Ryan, who's good, but, you know, he's not Tom Brady or anything. Well, this is his guy. This is his guy this season. This is no more excuses. Let's see what you got with your guy. Curious.
So are we disagreeing or not? Because if this is his guy, Iggy, I'm not interested in seeing Trey Lance develop. I assume he's developed. I'm interested in seeing him be a really good quarterback. I'm not giving him a break-in period of 3 or 4 games. Forget it.
Well, there's a scenario where Lance looks good. The offensive line looks bad. They missed the playoffs. But you look at Kyle as saying, he and Trey have a future. Like next year, they're going to be better. And maybe next year they win the Super Bowl. Like if they finish this season thinking, man, year 1 was good, year 2 could be better, then people will look at Kyle as maybe the real deal as a head coach because he finally developed his own quarterback. If Trey Lance is a bust, you'll look at Kyle as not a head coach. Like he's an offensive coach who can't evaluate the quarterback position, scout it, or develop it. He's a guy with a scheme that leads to a lot of interceptions. I mean, you look at him totally different. If Trey Lance goes down in flames, Kyle can't escape that. He can't distance himself from Trey the way he distanced himself from Jimmy. I didn't want Jimmy. John drafted Jimmy. Jimmy was a placeholder. This is the guy I want. Okay, well, he better be special. He better show something. Otherwise, you look like fool.
And also, I want to quibble with another thing you say. Well, Trey's really good, but the offensive line may not be that strong. Well, the head coach is responsible for the offensive line. I mean, it's not like you go out and you get all the bad offensive linemen you can. You try to get good offensive linemen. And if that's a problem and that holds back the production of the quarterback, that's on the head coach as well.
Agree. And we've been talking all offseason that not cutting Jimmy Garoppolo and not creating $25 million in cap space and using that is going to hurt this team. And ultimately that goes back to Kyle too. It's your team. You decided to mess around with Jimmy all year.
And they could have had offensive linemen.
True. So he put the Niners in a position where they're looking at potentially another losing season.
I don't know.
They could.
Yeah. What I think right now, I went through their schedule. If Trey Lance is okay but not great, I'm looking at a 9-8 team. If Trey Lance is really something, I'm looking at a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
How about you?
Those are two very plausible scenarios. This is also the other scenario where he's really good. He gets hit a lot. All it takes is one hit. He misses 3 games. And they missed the playoffs by 1 game. Because Kyler Murray missed a couple games last year, but the Cardinals made it to the playoffs because Colt McCoy won 2 games in a month. Yeah. I don't think the Niners can win without Trey Lance. I don't think unless Jimmy's still here, I don't think Nate Sudfeld's going to hold the fort for a month. That's not going to happen. There's a scenario where he plays well, gets hit, gets hurt, and the Niners are screwed because they don't have a backup quarterback. That's another thing this team doesn't have, a backup quarterback. They could have had one, but they're going to cut him in a few weeks.
Yeah. You know, that interesting what you said about hold down the fort.
It's an American thing, right?
In England, they say it different. They say hold the fort, which makes sense. The fort's being attacked and you hold your position.
Yes.
In the United States, we say hold down the fort, which of course makes no sense. And it seems to be like a floating fort, right?
Right. It's just going to blow away.
It's going to blow away, so you have to hold it down.
It's a hot air balloon.
Nothing to do with Trey Lance.
No, but it's a nice little distinction.
Yeah.
So is there, I mean,
but I want Iggy.
What else? He needs to be like eventually get to 500 or eclipse it. So that means 10-7 this year will get him there.
Okay, let's stay with Kyle Shanahan. Let's say what's at stake for him. Let's say what's a good season from your point of view. What's a successful season that for Kyle Shanahan where people, grouches like you and me, stop kvetching about him? What's a successful season?
Playoff berth at minimum. And then, maybe Trey Lance, who knows what he does in the playoffs if he gets there. But again, if you leave this season feeling like this is a team that can win the Super Bowl next year, I think that's good because you never felt he was going to win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. You might feel he could get there, but he's never going to win it with Jimmy Garoppolo. So if they don't win it this year, but you think this team is a legit Super Bowl contender next year, if they maybe add a couple pieces in free agency, hard to be mad at that.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think? What I
don't like about that, it's putting things off because their window is now. Who knows what happens in season 2023? Who's hurt? Who's available? I don't like to think that way. I like to think we're really good, and we're going to win it now. I don't want to make this season a parenthesis.
But it's like, if he had Matthew Stafford, if he had traded for Matthew Stafford, had the foresight like Sean McVay, you would say this is Super Bowl or bust year. If he had signed Tom Brady, like Tom Brady wanted to come here, and if he had just done that, Super Bowl or bust. But his choice was Jimmy Garoppolo, who's good but not good enough, or the 22-year-old wonder kid. You put yourself in this situation, Kyle. I mean, most likely you're not winning the Super Bowl no matter which quarterback you pick this year, and that's your fault.
You're saying that you don't think they can win the Super Bowl?
I mean, let's be realistic. He's 22. He hasn't played in 2 years. Come on. If he had started the second half of last year, I might feel differently. If Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't on this team and they'd actually put the best roster out there available, I might feel differently. But this team isn't going to win the Super Bowl, Dad.
See, I'm trying to be positive about Kyle Shanahan, but we're not being positive about Kyle Shanahan.
No.
You know what I'm told? I'm told when he's not around the media, he has a very good sense of humor. But you wouldn't know because you're the media.
Okay, cool. So when people aren't critical of him, he's a fun guy. It seems to me that to be in his inner circle, you kind of have to. He has like I don't know. You have to call him the greatest. He wants to be seen as the greatest, but I don't know. Sean McVay, he hasn't won anything yet. He needs to win something before he gets that title. Seems like McVay has a ring right now.
Yeah, and the word was that he owned Sean McVay, but now Sean McVay has won a Super Bowl, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, Kyle has to win something. He can't keep blaming his quarterbacks for the reason for him not winning.
And he can't always be an almost guy.
A high-level loser?
A high-level loser or an almost guy.
Because it's funny, he's so much different than Jim Harbaugh, but they're both, right now, as of now, high-level losers.
I
agree.
Have that common. I agree.
Okay, let's answer some questions. Jared says, any news on Trey Sermon? Haven't heard really much of anything good or bad. Will he make the roster in your opinion? It's hard to judge running backs without tackling. From my eye, I like Jeff Wilson Jr. better, Elijah Mitchell better, and the rookie Jordan Mason better too. He stutter steps a lot behind the line of scrimmage. Addy G says, couldn't Kaepernick have done the same Jimmy G has done or more during the last couple of years with Shanahan? We'll never know.
May I thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm.
I've had it with the topic of Kaepernick. Whether you agree or think it's a shame that he's not in the league, he hasn't played in how many years, Iggy?
6.
I mean, he's history, and he was history years ago.
Browns might sign him.
Are you serious?
I saw there's a report earlier this week that it might happen, but there's been that report a few times and it never happens.
Iggy, the Browns are not going to sign him. They're not. And remember, hold on. Remember he had that big deal tryout with the Raiders? Did they sign him?
No.
He's done. No one's going to sign him. And I'm not saying good riddance. I'm saying I'm a realist.
Yeah.
We need to move on from him.
Yeah, he's going to be 35 in 3 months. Hutch Serves Gaming says, Niner fans been waiting for years. The time is now to win, and John and Kyle need it just as badly as the fans do. We know the players want to win.
That's how I feel.
Win now. Trent Williams is almost 34 years old. Invading Robot says, hey, Grant Lowell, how do you come up with a good question to ask in the pressers? Do you plan the question ahead of time, or does context matter? Is there a skill to asking a follow-up question? Oh, here you go.
Okay, let's talk actually about Grant. Sometimes we do discuss it before he goes down there. Now, we haven't in the last week or so, but I'll say, Iggy, this is a pretty good question. Mm-hmm. And sometimes he does it. Also, Grant is very good at figuring out his own questions because I believe he knows the technicalities of the game of football better than the other people who are there, the other beat writers. Now you've raised a very important point about a follow-up question. Good luck. Good luck on a follow-up question. When I was a young man, and let's say I was in a press conference with Bill Walsh or George Seifert, it was very casual. It's very you didn't have to get the microphone,
Right.
and it was very casual. And we knew these guys.
Yeah.
I knew these guys. I would go to their office. This doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So George would answer a question. I'd say, George, I'd like to ask a follow up. Sure, Lowell. And you ask a follow up question. Iggy, can you ask a follow up right away now?
You can ask a follow up. There's a new PR director in town, and there's no more couple more cutting you off type of stuff. So you can, and you're gonna get there. But I remember your skill, your strategy with follow up questions is you listen to what they say and pick out something, a phrase, a word, the most interesting thing that they said, and say, "What do you mean by that?"
All the time.
What do you mean by that? And then they just have to re-explain what they said.
Yeah, because my feeling, boy, I love this topic. Not only my feeling, what I knew was, let's just talk about football because I covered all kinds of sports. The coach was prepared for certain questions. He would sit down with the PR guy, and the PR guy would say, expect this, and this question, and let's go over your answers.
Right.
So what I never wanted was a programmed answer, a canned answer. I wanted to make the coach think on his own, because more truth would come out when he wasn't prepared and he wasn't quite as comfortable, when it was a conversation like a normal conversation. So I would always say, what did you mean by that? Because I was an academic and I spent a lot of years teaching in college. And in a seminar, I'd say, interesting answer. What did you mean when you said this? And it was the same thing I did in the press conferences.
We covered the team together for 6 seasons. And we would go down, cover press conferences a lot. And when we would drive down, we would say, okay, what are we asking? What are you asking? What am I asking? And there's like, every time there's the news questions, and either you'll ask them or someone else will ask them, but they have to be asked. And what this person is asking is, do you always have planned questions? Yeah, you have those, but it's also good sometimes to just listen, because those planned questions are going to get asked by someone. Often the answer is interesting, and you say, hey, you said this. I didn't expect that. And like, what do you mean by that, or whatever? But yeah, a lot of the questions are based on what the guy said that day, because you don't know.
That's right.
Yeah. It's a good question. J.R. Beckles says, everyone forgets the pre-Kyle Lynch era of chaos and embarrassment. How can Niner fans ever suggest that we move on from Kyle and Lynch? I guess there's the fear that, left to his own devices, this is the best Jed York could do, Kyle and Lynch.
No one's here is suggesting they move on.
True.
We haven't said that today.
No, we haven't.
No, we're just saying what's at stake.
Yeah.
That's all we're saying, what's at stake. And also, Harbaugh was not chaos. He was a hell of a head coach. It was two Schlemiels who came after that were chaos, and you put that at Jed's door.
True. Jay Sports Enthusiast says, do we really think that Lance's psyche isn't affected knowing that Jimmy is still on this team? For every interception and over-under throw pass he commits, I'm sure having Jimmy on the sideline doesn't help. That's how I felt coming into the offense. I felt like there's already he's under a microscope. Why increase the why? It just seems like he's 22. Your job as a coach is to take pressure off of him. And of course you can say, hey, you got to be ready for the pressure at some point, but still, it seems like the coach's job is to not heap it on. But we've already discussed how ridiculous it is that it's not like Jimmy Garoppolo being there at practice is a good thing.
No. And okay, let me ask you this before you go to the next question. Would you have, if you were Kyle Shanahan, would you have said, Jimmy, stay away from practice?
You can come to the practice field at 7 a.m, but you got to be gone by 8. And then you can come back at 7 at night. But you can't be here when there are fans out here, when there's media out here. You're not on our team. You can't be seen by anyone. You're a ghost. You're persona non grata.
And according to the league rules, he could do that. Say you can come, but not while we practice.
Maybe not. Maybe they said, please don't be here. And he said, you know what? I'd like the media to see me throwing. Thank you very much. Thank you. Who knows? Seth Harvey says, Grant, we can win the bowl this year. Trust me. Sure they can. A lot of things. Yeah, they have a very talented team. Jay Sports Enthusiast says, also non-football topic, Mr. Cohn, you seem wise. Have any advice for a father that has 2 daughters, 2 and 4? I'm trying for the boy, but think I should swing for the fences.
Well, I see this again. I'm trying for the boy. Think I just, you mean, should you have a third child?
Yeah, you probably should discuss that one with your wife.
That's one with your wife, but
Yeah.
boy, I think it's a gift from God to have two lovely daughters.
Yeah. You're blessed.
You're blessed.
You're lucky. Ray Histo is a new member. Thank you. Dave Barclay, again, thank you. Do me a favor. Say hi to my nephew, Evan. He's the one that got the new BA jersey. Evan who?
Say hello to his, to Ed. Say hello.
Okay. Hello, Evan. I will. Okay, moving on. Last topic. Keep pressing right click. Okay. I'd like to give sort of my honest assessment of this offense because it's a little rough around the edges. And this is Kyle's offense. This is his baby. So I'd like to talk about it. Real quick. And if you have any questions, if you think I'm being too easy or harsh, let me know. Today it looked good. I think it was manufactured. They took out some starters from the defense. When it's all the starters in the defense against all the starters in the offense, the defense is better. And so is this cause for alarm? Maybe, maybe not. The defense is top 3 in the league. And in practice, it's very much passing oriented. When they do a run play, it's hard to tell if it's a good one or a bad one because there's no tackling. If it's a pass play, you know exactly if it worked or not. Pass is complete. It's not. It's intercepted. You can tell. And it's great. Like this passing game is definitely not great, but at all. It's not great. But I think it's important to remember that they're going to run the ball a lot. Their identity is to run the ball a lot. And they're just sort of leaning into their identity more is the way I see it. I think when the season starts and they start game planning, we're going to see a million different ways to run the ball. And maybe 20 throws a game. Maybe that's not how you envision a championship team looking, but that's what they did with Jimmy anyway, especially in the playoffs. Let's run the ball as much as possible. And so I think to that end, they'll be better at accomplishing that, the running. I don't know what the passing will look like, but I know that they'll have some deep throws here and there. And I don't know what it'll look like on third down. He probably will improve as the year goes on as a passer. But I do think this team could set the franchise record for rushing yards.
I have a question.
Yes.
The offensive line, which is still a question mark.
Yes.
Especially in pass protection. How is it as a run blocking offensive line?
Trent Williams is great. Mike McGlinchey's good. The other 3 guys are total unknowns. The left guard didn't play last year. The right guard's a rookie. The center is a 29-year-old rookie. I mean, he hasn't played. So I guess we'll see in the preseason. So, but they still have Trent Williams. They still have Juszczyk, Kittle. They still have Kyle. I mean, they have things they can do.
But what I want to say is one thing that I find fascinating is the offensive line and the quarterback are both, I'm going to say, kind of unknowns. They're kind of unknowns today. And it's hard to say how good the offense is going to be without knowing those 2 factors.
Yeah. You have to learn like how bad the weak spots in the offense are before you can figure out what you can do.
Yeah. I mean, Iggy, if the offensive line really does come together, and if this kid is a B+ or an A- quarterback, that's a hell of a team.
It is.
That could be a Super Bowl team. But Iggy, I can't say, and in a way, I don't think you can say until we know what the offensive line is like and what the quarterback is like.
And we haven't seen Kyle game plan for this particular roster. But I'll give you an example. So in training camp, they'll just cycle through plays and they'll do a lot of passing, a lot of drop back passing using the shotgun throw. And it can look good, it can look bad. All of a sudden, they do a drill where it's like they're up 3, 2 minutes left. You're at the 35, and it's like a game without tackling. All of a sudden, the play calling's different. The first play in this period today, zone read, 65-yard touchdown run on the left side. And the next play, another zone read. So I have a feeling when the game's actually going, it's going to be very little passing. See if it works. But they've won that way in the past.
Absolutely. They have a great run game. And one thing I like about Shanahan, his ego doesn't get in the way, so he feels I have to show I'm brilliant with a lot of passes. He's content is the wrong word, but he's content to run it, which is less sexy, less glamorous, but you win. And I admire that.
The way that he schemes up the run game is pretty sexy and glamorous. I mean, he's got a lot going on, and he gets a lot of credit for it. I think he even takes pride in everyone else makes their their money with the pass game. Look what I can do in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be even more extreme this year because there's only so much you can do in the run game when the quarterback isn't involved and doesn't do play action. Now you have this whole element of misdirection involving the quarterback. Will he keep it in throw? Will he keep it in run? I don't know. And that uncertainty should help everyone else.
And when you have a really strong running game that can power you and the defense can't stop you, everything else on offense is open to you. The minute that happens, the passing game, everything else is open to you. It's the key. And he sees that key.
And I think it's nice that instead of throwing him in and saying, hey, Trey, lead the team with your arm, they're going to say, you are a complimentary piece on this team. Hand off. And if you do well with that, we'll put a little bit more on your plate. Eventually, one day, he could become a Pro Bowl quarterback. But they're not going to expect that of him right away. They're going to say, don't mess up. Don't throw any picks. Scramble. Hand off. If it's wide open, hit it. And if you do well with that, then we'll go from there. That's sort of how the Seahawks handled Russell Wilson at first. I think it's a smart way to handle a young athlete at the position.
Sounds fair to me. Yeah. Sounds. I'm expecting or desiring that he's like a finished product in game one, but that's unrealistic. I understand, and I can be grumpy sometimes.
Fair. I think it's just, I guess what I'm trying to say is the offense, I think, looks worse now than it will during the season. I think during the season we should, if the offensive line holds up, we should see a run game that's probably the best one Kyle's had here. How about that?
I love it. I love it.
How about that? And remember, look, Kaepernick wasn't a better quarterback than Alex Smith, but the offense was more dangerous with him because just the run game itself, they're a run-first team. All of a sudden, the run game was better with Kaepernick on the field. I think we're going to see a little bit of that effect with this offense. Yards per carry go up. We'll see.
Sounds fair to me.
Dad, I'm schwitzing.
Okay. Let's sign off. I'll call you in a minute.
Let me make sure there's no one else that had something to say. I don't think so. If the Niners miss the playoffs, will Kyle get fired? No.
Okay, I love it. Could we stay here a second?
Yeah.
If they miss the playoffs, I don't think he'll get fired, but I'd fire him.
Whew.
I would. If they miss the playoffs, with the
biggest reason not to fire Kyle Shanahan.
Huh?
Biggest reason not to fire Kyle Shanahan. Not to give Trey Lance another offense to learn. Remember they did that with Alex Smith?
Got it. Okay.
It's tricky. But look, if he misses the playoffs, boom, hot seat. Better make it next year.
Okay.
Better make it next year, bud. I mean, I think it's either, look, Jed won't fire him. You might, but I think even Jed would have to acknowledge if he misses the playoffs again, you're on the hot seat. You can't make the playoffs once every 3 years, Kyle.
What's the hot seat?
I don't know.
Your
seat just spontaneously combusts. Callie says, seems as if there isn't a gray area with Kyle. He wins, great coach. Doesn't win, bust and should be replaced.
Okay. If he doesn't make the playoffs, if I was still writing columns and he didn't make the playoffs, I'd put him on the hot seat.
I'm putting him on the hot seat right now. Whatever that means.
Whatever that means.
All right. Oh, hold on. Last one, and then the show's over. Daniel Kelly in the comments calling Lance a bust. My question is, considering he's a former scout, can we call him a bust? Daniel Kelly is a bust. Hey, man, Daniel Kelly's entitled to his opinion. No one knows about Lance. We'll find out soon enough. He had a good day today. He was awful the other day. And talking about it this morning, Kyle didn't seem particularly enthusiastic. Jack Cameron was like, so what's your assessment of Trey in camp? And Kyle's like, some good, some bad. The interception's got to stop. The one couple of days ago was unacceptable. It's like, okay, all right. Well, Trey got the message. He did better today. We'll see how he does tomorrow.
All right,
I love you.
Love you. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.